I've got my eyes on Fringe season, not for the first time this year, and I've recorded some other videos on behalf of Fringe Review. But this particular bit of my gaze at the moment begins with Fringe season in the spring, going into summer here in the UK, and culminates for me personally at the Edinburgh Fringe in August, which is already sending out all kinds of press releases of hundreds, if not thousands, of shows already on sale. And this is inspired really by people around me telling me how when they wake up in the morning they feel very torn because they want to know what's going on in the world, but they daren't look, being privileged here in the West and seeing what's happening over in Ukraine, over in, of course, Iran and the Middle East, and further afield. We mustn't forget there are wars on the African continent. We can go out to Burma and all sorts of other places, and there is strife. We also have other concerns in the world at the moment. We've certainly got concerns about the safety, let's say particularly but not exclusive to our children online, with the rise of AI and social media, and some of the horrendous stories about children being driven to all kinds of worrying behaviours and even suicide as a result of being targeted by the world of the digital. And then, of course, we've still got, though, for some people, it's worryingly on the back burner in some countries, which is the whole worrying stuff about climate change. And these are the big events in the world that you may or may not switch on in the morning to find out about. Or you might start your day and catch up with the news later. And you might be one of the increasing number of people I've spoken to who are turning their gaze away from what's going on in the news and finding it unbearable. And my own view is that's just something we shouldn't do. We have to embrace it in whatever way we can. And some of you are more or less active in that space. I just wanted to draw your attention from the reviewing world to work that we're going to see and just put a few maybe challenging thoughts your way about world events. Now, quite often you'll see a phrase in reviews around the two words, maybe it's one word, self-indulgence. And I do think that it's really important with what's happening in the world at the moment, if you're creating work, to be wary and humble about what self-indulgence means. Certainly the arts and entertainment have always offered escapism. Perhaps it's never been easy in the world, and certainly I would say in the privileged West, that might be a term that annoys you, but it means that we go into the arts and particularly entertainment to escape, to not have to think about these things, to just have a good laugh, to have a good cry, to escape into a fantasy, to not have to deal with the sometimes unbearable day-to-day reality, and the arts takes us away from it. And I believe if that's intentional, and that is marketed honestly as that, those that want to go can choose to, and you won't be held necessarily to account for being escapist if you're offering escapism. Equally, you're going to go and find work that takes on the world issues and tries to move the world forward in its thinking, in its feeling and its doing. And certainly there are countries, and I remember, for example, at the collapse of Yugoslavia, the artists were going out to Zagreb because some of the work being made there was some of the most visceral and best that people here had ever seen, and they wanted to go and work with artists who were confronting reality. And certainly that's true of the arts community in many, many different countries, as they literally seek to influence their governments and to get people thinking, feeling and doing different things as a result of the mirror that art can put up to the world and to you. And art can be disruptive. Art on the streets can be disruptive. Art as protest. And you may well have decided at one of your Fringe festivals to be very, very clear that your work is intentionally the opposite of escapism. It's not to escape, it's gritty reality. It's genuine, it's an honest, direct attempt to ask the tough questions and to use theatre, art, performance, comedy, whatever it is, as an intervention. But I think the danger, and I particularly think about the bigger festivals such as the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, to not think that through deeply, not be aware of what your motives are, what your intentions are. And sometimes motives can be good, but clumsy, and sometimes intentions are simply not known to you, and therefore the intentions are read by the audience and can be misread, or simply they do read intentions because they find them and you weren't aware of them. And that's the intentions of your work. I guess there is forms of art where you don't know what your intentions are, and that's part of the creative process. And I guess that's fine too. But I'd say I'm expecting to see work that's going to be morally very clumsy. It's going to present itself as something that's trying to take on a really important question, and it's simply been too arrogant. It simply hasn't done its research. It simply thinks it can ask tough questions, but it doesn't go as deep as the audience is expecting to go. It can accidentally or deliberately generalize, caricature. It can come from a certain perspective that you may not be aware that you've got. Sometimes it's the middle class privileged perspective, and it's trying to do good, but there's a huge difference between doing good and do-gooding. And do-gooding is art that can really collapse at the Edinburgh Fringe because it simply is naive, or it's simply arrogant, and it's trying to answer questions it hasn't earned the right to ask, or the answers are just too biased or too superficial. And so all of that work, I think, when the times are particularly dark in the world, I think the bar on being, I'm going to use the word, it's become its own cliche, authentic, on deserving, earning the right to ask the questions it does, the bar is quite high. And certainly what Edgar Schein calls humble inquiry in your research into your work is important. Sometimes it's important to bill in your marketing that we're trying something, but we recognise we might not succeed. That this is an early inquiry into something, that we recognised our privileged position, but we're doing what we can. And you can invite the audience to meet that with a suspension of disbelief because you are well-intentioned. But where it's just clumsy and accidental and arrogant and thinks it's already entitled to success because it's asking something worthy, all of this stuff can start to hit the 1 and 2 star ratings of other reviewers, even if the work's quality, if the performances are good, if the material falls somewhere awkwardly between being very clear escapism or being kind of detailed, gritty, touching realism, important moral work that simply hasn't worked hard enough to get where it is, your shows can collapse. And that's when a 5-star or more review in your local hometown with a friendly audience can collapse into 1 star in the Scotsman, if that. And I think you need to be wary of it. And I think as a group, it's important now, whether you're an individual performer, maybe with a director or not, or whether you're a bigger group, is to touch base on your intentions, touch base on your motives, is to test out whether you've set your work, pitched it at the right level and quality for dealing with the material it's trying to do. And just be careful of not particularly stumbling clumsily into moral material around the world today, where clearly it's simply going to get an angry or irritated response to the audience because they simply don't feel you deserve their attention or that you've worked hard enough. Now, if that frightens you a bit, I think it's important because the world at the moment, for me at least, is very frightening.